We continue now at the top of Daf 20b Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 20b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara asked when an image is placed onto a coin by pressing down on the metal and creating that image on the coin. So is the idea that the outside of the image is being pushed down and memela, the image protrudes, so that would not really be ksiva? Or is the metal being forced into the press, into the mold, so to speak, and it's considered direct writing? And the Gemara said it's not considered to be writing. And so the Gemara asked, we have a brisa that talks about the tzitz, and it compares it to the way that coins are made. And so the problem is, haba'ina michtav v'leka, but by the tzitz hazav, it uses the word michtav. It is considered writing. So how could you say that it's like dinare zav, if when they create the image with a mold on dinare zav, that's not considered to be writing? And the Gemara answers, Kedinari Zav velo Kedinari Zav. It's similar to Dinari Zav, but it's not exactly like Dinari Zav. Kedinari Zav debolate. It's like Dinari Zav in the sense that the image protrudes. Velo Kedinari Zav, but it's not like Dinari Zav. Dilu hasa migavoy v'acha me'avroy, because over there it's from the inside, and over here it's from the outside. And Rashi explains, by the coins it's migavoy, it's from the inside. What that really means is maka haroshem ba'oso tzad shatzur boletus bo. It means you're pressing down on the same side of the coin where the image is going to be protruding. That's why the idea is it's not really writing, because you're just pressing down around where the image will be. Avol tzitz, but when it comes to the tzitz, dochek me'avroy, it's from the outside, meaning from the other side that they press in the letters, so they're directly carving or chiseling the letters. V'boletus migavoy, and then it protrudes from the other side. That's already considered to be ksiva. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Rava me Rav Nachman. Rava asked Rav Nachman the following question. Kasav lo get al tas shel zav. Let's say he writes for her a get, and it's on a plate of gold. V'yamar lo, and he says to her, Iskabli gitech, v'eskabli ksubasech. It's very valuable, so he says, this is not only going to be your get, receive your get, but also, this is going to be counted as your ksuba, receive your ksuba. Mahu, what's the halacha? Amar Lei said to him, Niskabla Gitav and Niskabla Ksubasa. She has received her get, and she has also received her ksuba. Esvei, we have the following question. Niskabla Gitach v'ashar l'ksubasich. Let's say you have a parchment, and you say, take this as your get, and the rest will be for your ksuba. Niskabla Gitav v'ashar l'ksubasa. So it is considered like she has received her get, and the rest of it is for the ksuba. Meaning to say, the parchment was larger than the amount of writing that was on it. There was extra parchment, and that part can count as the ksuba. So the Gemara says, Taima dikashar, the only reason that works is because there's extra part of the parchment that's not being used. Halek ashar lo, but if there was no extra, so then this would not be considered to be effective. You can't give the same area where the get is written on, you can't count that as the ksuba as well. And the Gemara says, no, hu adin afagav de lekashar. The same halacha would be true even if there was no remainder, even if there was no extra parchment. V'kamash malon, and this is teaching us as follows: Tiafagav de ikashar. Even though there is extra parchment, I omar lo in. If he says to her, this is for the ksuba, then yes, it can count as the ksuba. Ilo lo, but if he doesn't say that to her, it will not count as the ksuba. My time, what's the reason? Avira de megiltu, because it's all considered part of the same scroll. It's all considered one document. And Rashi explains, Haleka Sharlo, if there's no extra parchment, he can't do this. Makom get boy lemesav la matana gemur, because the area where the get is written, it has to be given to her as a total gift, mishum gerishin, as a divorce. V'lo l'shem piron, it can't be to pay off the ksuba. T'chsiv v'nasan, that's what we learned from the word v'nasan in the pasuk. Iyamar lo l'chsubasech, and again we said if there is extra parchment, it's only if he designates it and says that it's for the ksuba. Otherwise, it's considered avira, it's considered gilyon, it's just the margin of the get. It can't be considered the ksuba unless he specifies. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, and this is from the Tosefta, Hareze gitech v'aniyar shali. If a person says, this is your get, but the paper belongs to me, eina migureshes, that is not a good gerushin, it's not a divorce. Al menashe tachzir li esaniyar, but if he says on condition that you return the paper to me, hareze migureshes, then she is divorced, that is considered a gerushin. Rashi says, v'haniyar kol haniyar ani ma'akev le'atzmi, I'm keeping all the parchment, the paper for myself. Eina megureshes, it's not a divorce. The kevan dahaniyar shalo lo nasan laklum. If he's keeping the paper, so then he hasn't given her anything. Denimtzu osios porchos ba'avir, because the letters are just flying in the air. Hareze megureshes, but if it's just to return the paper, that is a divorce. V'tachzer, she should return it. To matana al manas lahachzer shma matana. There's a general rule: if you give a gift on the condition that the gift be returned, that is still called a gift. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rav Papa asks the following question. Bein shita l'shita, let's say he says between the lines is going to belong to me. Or bein tever l'tever, let's say he says between the words will belong to me. What's the halacha? The Gemara says take, the Gemara leaves that as a question. But the Gemara says v'tepek lei the sefer echad amar rachman v'lo shnayim u'shlosha svarim. But we should say that that's no good, because it has to be one document, one sefer. It can't be two or three. And here, if he's taking all the paper in between the words, so you're carving it up into multiple documents. And the Gemara says to that, lo no tzricha, we need this question or this case, the ma'ura, the case is where all the letters are intertwined, and so therefore even if he took all the paper between the letters, you still would have one document. Rashi says the Ma'ura b'mixas shayuba osios aruchin hamagiyan mishita l'shita. You have these letters that are long that connect all the different lines. Barashi kol teva v'teva at the front of every word, so everything is connected. Even if he were to take for himself everything in between the words, it would still be sefer echad. So that's why this was a question. And again, the Gemara said take, the Gemara left it as a question. And the Gemara continues, boy, Rami Bar Chama asks the following question, if we have a presumption that a particular slave belongs to him, it belongs to the husband, the get kosav al yada, and there's a get written on the Eved, and she now has possession of this Eved. So what's the halacha? Do we say that the Eved was given over to her and this is a divorce? Maybe the Eved just went on his own to the wife. There's no proof that there was a divorce. Amar Rava says, but why don't we say that this is considered a writing that can be forged? Rashi over here says, maybe over here there was a condition in the get and it was erased. You can erase the writing that's on the Eved. But the Gemara continues, but according to Rava, Kasha Masnisan, if he's asking this question, he can ask the same question on our Mishnah. The Mishnah says you can write a get on the hand of an Eved, and so clearly the Mishnah is not bothered by the fact that it can be erased on the hand of an Eved, that it's forgeable. But the Gemara says, no, Bishlama Masnisan l'Rava lo Kasha. I understand our Mishnah according to Rava. That wasn't difficult to Rava. Be'edei Mesira, for Rebbe Lazari, because you could just say our Mishnah, there are Edei Mesira, there are Edim that are witnessing the giving over of the get, and it follows Rebbe Lazar. But according to Rami Bar Chama, we do have this difficulty. How can you have the case where the get is written on the Eved? And Rashi says, Be'edei Mesira shakaruhu. In other words, the Edei Mesira, they read the get, so they can testify to the contents. They know whether there were conditions or not. Rebbe Lazar, he d'amar yafshel leget below Edei Mesira. It follows Rebbe Lazar that it's impossible to have a get without Edei Mesira. Ela the Rami Bar Chama kasha the boy didei b'deleka Edei Mesira. Because the question of Rami Bar Chama is talking in a situation where there were no Edei Mesira. If there were Edei Mesira, then obviously we know he gave the Eved over to the wife. Obviously we know it's a divorce. So there were no Edei Mesira. So according to Rami Bar Chama, if there were no Edei Mesira, don't we have another problem over here that it's ksav sheyachol lihizdayif? And the Gemara answers to that, L'Rami Bar Chama nami lokasha. According to Rami Bar Chama, it's also not difficult. B'chsovas kaka, we're talking about it's written as a tattoo that cannot be forged, it cannot be changed. And the Gemara says, Hashta dosis lachi. Once we have this answer, Mas Nisa nami lo tikshir. Our Mishnah also is not difficult. B'chsovas kaka, we could just say that we're talking about a tattoo, and that's why it's not a problem that it's a ksav sheyachol is daif. And the Gemara says, "My have Allah." So, what is the conclusion in terms of the issue of the chazaka? Do we assume that the Eved was given to the wife and it's a divorce, or maybe the Eved went on his own? And the Gemara says, "Tashma." Come in here the following proof: the Amar Reish Lakish, because Reish Lakish says, "Hagodros einlen chazaka." When it comes to livestock, there is no chazaka because they wander around. Just because it's in someone's possession doesn't mean it was actually given over to that individual. And the Gemara continues, boy, Rami Bar Chama asks the following question, let's say there's a presumption that a slate belongs to her, V'get kosav alen, there's a get written on it, V'arei yotza mitachas yodo, and it's now in the possession of the husband. So what's the halacha? Mi amrina naknuya aknisulei. Do we say that she gave it over to him, he now owns it, is able to write this get? Odil mi shelo yada laknuya, maybe she doesn't know to be able to be maknet to him, and so therefore, again, it has to be coming from him to her to be a good get, and maybe this will not be a good get. And Rashi says, V'arei yotze mitachas yado, he's the one that now has possession, shubal lagarsh, and he wants to divorce her with it. So lo yada laknuya, maybe she doesn't know to be maknid, lo gamru maknid davar she'in belibo lases matana gemura. She doesn't give it over as a full matana to him, but lo girsha ela b'shalon, and ends up that he's divorcing her with her own property, v'anan boyin and v'nasim, but we need him to give it over to her, so it has to start off as his property. So what's the halacha in such a situation? And the Gemara says, Amar Abaya says, Tashma, come in here a proof from a mission in Edios, this is talking about Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. He testified about a small village at the side of Yerushalayim. And there was a certain elder. He would lend money to all the people of the village. And then he would write the document with his handwriting. And others would sign. And this incident came before the Chachamim. And they said it's kosher. They said these are good documents. And so the Gemara says, why is it a good document? Don't we need it to be safe from mikna? Meaning, again, it needs to go from the lovet to the malva. That's how the document has to be made. Rather, is it not that we say that he gave it over to them, he gave them ownership, and then it came back to him? And so we should say the same thing over here. And Rashi explains, Sefer Mikna Veleka. Don't we need it to be Sefer Mikna? That comes from a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. The makna is the one that needs to write the shtar. Sadai mechurulach, my field is being sold to you. To me'ukra nafkal on meperakam into Kiddushin. We learned this out from that pasuk in the first parak of Kiddushin. Elalav shmamino ki makni lei shaper dami v'afagav dein bedaito shel nosen she'akveno hamakabel etzlo. Rather, don't we see that he is makning it over to them, even though he knows it's going to come right back to him. And you see that such a kinyan does work. But the Gemara continues. Amar Rava says, "Umay kosher." But what's your question? Meaning, what are you bringing from this case of the elder in this village by Yerushalayim? Dilma, maybe there it's different, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph.